So here we have it, the iconic BMW E46, a car that makes you instantly think of drifting and video games. Personally, whenever I look at this car, I just instantly think of Need for Speed Most Wanted, with the car off the blacklist, the blue and silver one. Even though this isn't a pre-facelift, neither is it an M3 competition, but I can dream. No, this isn't that. This is merely the 2.2 litre petrol 6-cylinder M54 engine. Before I let my childhood dreams make me run away with the fairies, let's talk about the car. The BMW E46 came in many different variations, such as coupe, saloon, compact, estate, even convertible. The possibilities were truly endless, and that's without even taking into consideration the LCI, pre-LCI, facelift, pre-facelift, and M-Sport and non-M Sport models. But one of the things BMW really did correct with this car was the two engines in particular. They obviously had the diesel M57 6-cylinder that were basically as good as bulletproof, and exactly the same with the petrol 6-cylinder M54 engines. Now, let's start with the looks of the car. You look at it, and don't get me wrong, it is old, yes, but in my opinion, it still withholds a certain type of road presence. And what I mean by this is, if you go to your local Tesco or Asda car park and you park it in there, it will stick out like a sore thumb in comparison to all the other new sort of cars. And I think the main thing that I can say about this car is I just prefer the M Sport bumper over the non-M Sport bumper, as it looks a bit dull without it. Now, living under the bonnet is a 2.2 litre 6-cylinder M54 engine producing approximately 168 brake horsepower. Which, don't get me wrong, that type of horsepower in this day and age is not a lot by any standards, but by God, it doesn't half make a gorgeous sound whilst it's making that power. But we'll get to that a little later. So, like most engines, it comes with its common faults, such as the whole coolant system tends to fail after a certain amount of mileage, and that the rubber gaskets tend to fail on the rocker cover, the deesser, the sump, and the oil filter housing gasket. And depending on the mileage and the age of the one that you buy, the likelihood is that the Vanos will need a rebuild as well. Now let's look in the boot. You'll have to excuse my mess here, but as to be expected in a saloon boot, it is somewhat spacious and it is quite deep, but the only problem is you lack the height that you would on something like an estate or even a little hatchback. And the limitations don't really stop there, because you think, well, I can just drop the seats back, but these seats are fixed in place and will not fall. One thing I love about BMWs of this era is you have this little toolbox here, where 9 times out of 10 things tend to be missing, but you've got your locking wheel nut and your spanners and things like that. There aren't many cars that I've owned that have actually had a feature like this. So underneath the carpet, you get what appears to be enough room for maybe 2 space savers, because we have all this room on top of here, and underneath there's another wheel. So I think if you was confident enough, you could probably fit 2 space savers in there. And as an added bonus, this is the thing I love about these old cars, you always have these little quirky features. You have a 6 CD player. So inside you can expect leather seats, a leather door card, and BMW's signature mood lighting. And what I mean by this is the orange light that comes from the center light and on the dials. It is a really nice place to be, especially at night. And I must say, everything feels quite nice in here. And I've always loved BMWs for how they have this trim that goes along the dash. This plastic silver strip that follows the dash, and everything just seems quite nice, and anything you touch feels quite well made. And you know, you don't get any sort of creaky plasticness, so like too much. It all just feels well put together. Now I want to move on to the thing that irritates me the most about this car, and that you've got all these storage bases. You know, you've got your typical storage by the side of the door, you've got your little change flap there, you've even got a bit of storage in the armrest there. Obviously 2 sections here, but and also the storage that you have just underneath the radio. But no cup holders, not one cup holder. It's almost as if the designer went mad. I think if there's anything that makes a car, it's cup holders. And to put 0 in, I think is an absolute joke, and it's ridiculous. And I think you're absolutely mad if you think that a car is okay without cup holders. But that is literally the one thing that drags it down for me. Apart from that, it is a really nice place to be. The back seats, on the other hand, they're not so spacious. For something like this, you'd expect it maybe a bit more space, but on the plus side, it does fit a car seat in. So for the family man, it's quite a decent car for that. But again, you just lack that space in the boot. So if you ever want to go away anywhere, then it sort of restricts you. So now the last thing to do is to talk about how it drives. Now, obviously the thing is, it's a 20-year-old car. It's going to be a bit old, as you can probably hear. It's a bit creaky, a bit rickety. You know, it's had a life at the end of the day. But it still feels quite smooth. You know, they could probably do with some new shocks, but it seems to handle everything quite nicely, and it's still nice and quiet in here. It's not too loud, there's not too much road noise or anything like that. And the car really does do itself quite well. And on to the thing I was talking about earlier, the exhaust. Take a listen to this. So, there we have it, the BMW E46. It's not the best car you could probably buy with your money, but I think it's up there, you know. And I think it's, I think what it is you can still afford to get a little bit of BMW's history, you know. Like, this was one of the best engineered cars of its time, and, you know, this in the 5 Series. And I really do urge, if you've never owned one, even if you've never owned a BMW, I think this would be a great starting point. And if you've owned BMWs and you've never owned this one, I would strongly recommend you own one and experience it. Because although it's not the fastest car on the road, like, you feel so in touch with it. Like, the steering's heavy, you know, and I don't know, you just, even as an automatic, it doesn't feel dead. It still feels like it's got a little bit of soul to it. I'd absolutely urge anybody any day of the week to buy one of these. I picked this one up for £800, and you know that they can really, they vary, because I've had to do some work with this one, but they vary. You know, you can pay something like £800 and have to do a bit of work, or you can go pay like £3 or £4 grand for like an immaculate one. But nevertheless, there's not a lot of bad things I can say about this car. And if I have to be honest, it's one of the best cars I've ever owned. And I'm trying to be biased here, but I'm just being honest. I think this even gives the 5 Series a run for its money. But yeah, that is a review on my BMW E46. If you did enjoy the video, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and maybe even hit that bell icon for notification on future uploads. But until the next time, guys, peace.